as I was saying, that it's very common in spiritual life that you hit a point and you can become very discouraged. But the point is that the condition we're in presently does not necessarily have to discourage us, even if it's not good. Just because you see that often when people begin Krishna consciousness, they're very enthusiastic, but they're just new to Krishna consciousness. So that means they haven't had years and years of practice to evolve above the conditioning. So they're starting. But they're very enthusiastic in spite of the conditioning. So it means that even though the conditioning is there, it doesn't necessarily mean that the process cannot work or be effective. So Jagai and Madai are examples that no matter how bad we are, we can become purified. It'll just take time. So that's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying here. He's saying that Krishna, because of his mercy, no matter how low we fall, he's always willing to pick us up. So it's like we never should give up, because he's always willing, he's always ready. So if we give up, it doesn't mean Krishna's given up, it just means we've given up. But he's always reciprocating with our intention and our desire. So if our intention weakens or our desire weakens because we become discouraged by seeing what's in our own heart, then we are not, how should we say it? See, Krishna's it's like you have to show him what's in your heart and what you want, and then he reciprocates with that. Just like you may want something and you want somebody to give it to you because you can't get it yourself. But if you don't tell them, then it's unlikely they're going to give it to you, or there's less of a chance. So in the same way, Krishna, he wants us to express what our desire is. So even though there's contamination within us, if we express our deepest desire to come closer to him, then that's what he sees and that's what's important. And that's Krishna's nature. Like our nature is, somebody does 98% of everything they do is good, and we have the nature to see the 2% bad and focus on that and say, yeah, well, he's good, but he doesn't eat with doesn't hold his fork right, properly. He doesn't know the etiquette. We'll see something bad. Krishna's the opposite. We can do 98% bad, but if there's 2% good, he sees that. But more important, Krishna sees what the intention is. So even if a devotee is not perfect yet and is stumbling and falling, but the intention is to be perfect, that's what Krishna sees. That's what he cares about. Because we tend to care more about externals. What does a person offer? What can they do? What's their value? What are their talents? Where's their intelligence? What can they give me? What can they give the world? But Krishna, he's about relationship. So those things don't matter for him in relationship. He's about affection. So when you're about affection and relationship, it's all about the heart. What's in the heart? What's the intention? So we always need to remember that the intention in our heart is what Krishna sees, and it's what attracts Krishna. And all the dirty things will not really be a problem for Krishna. If we allow the intention to serve him, the intention to please him, the desire to want to be Krishna conscious, if we allow that to override those other things, then we can please Krishna, even in a state where we have many, many material desires. That's because that's how you have to understand Krishna's nature. Now, Krishna knows that sometimes we're weak. He knows it well. He created this world, so he knows how it works, so he knows that we'll become weak. So that's not really a demerit for us, okay? You have 10 strikes against you. If you get 11, then that's it. Krishna gives up on you. It's not like that. Those strikes against us are just conditioning. They're material desires. They come up. We're gradually purifying ourselves from them. In lower stages of bhakti, they don't go away right away. They go away in higher stages of bhakti. So while in lower stages, when they're there, what do we really have to offer to Krishna? We have our heart. We have our sincerity. We have our desire to please Him. Just like in the Gita, Krishna says, serve me with love. So like Shushma is saying, well, I don't feel I have love. Yeah, so it's true. Technically speaking, love, prema, we don't have that. But we have the seed of it. And in our conditioned state, we manifest that love through the sincerity of purpose and desire. Because that's the love we can offer. Just like Prabhupada once said, he said, they were talking about following the instructions of the spiritual master, of chanting 16 rounds, following 4 regular principles. And Prabhupada said, well, if you love the spiritual master, then you follow his instructions. That's how you show love. Obedience is what do they say? Obedience is the first law of love. That's how you show your love and affection. So that's one way we show love and affection. Before it's fully matured, we show it through following practices. But even equally as important is that because sometimes we slip in those practices, it's the intention or desire to follow them perfectly. It's the intention and desire to become pure. It's the intention and desire to want to please Krishna, even if we're not perfect at pleasing Him. That's what attracts Krishna. That's what pleases Krishna. So that and we all have that, because we all have the freedom to sincerely serve at any time. We all have it. Krishna's given that to us. So that means we can manifest in the conditioned stage, or in the stage of sadhana, we can manifest devotion and love. Not prema, not bhava, but we can manifest it relative to our consideration. And Krishna will be pleased. So that's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying here. He's saying, no matter how low you've gone, you can turn yourself around. So, as an analogy, we're swimming in the ocean of ignorance. And the ocean seems very vast and it seems difficult to overcome. But we always have the choice to try to overcome it. And then, when that choice is made, then Krishna sends help. And He sends the sadhu, the guru, the devotee to come and help us. So that's why, an interesting thing that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said. He said that when a disciple or a prospective disciple is looking for a guru, he said, what is really important is that the disciple tries to advance in Krishna consciousness, because by trying to advance in Krishna consciousness, then Krishna reciprocates by sending persons who can help them advance. That's just how Krishna works. You want to advance, so Krishna sends you devotees who will help you. You see? So generally we think, well, I should look and find. Okay, that's okay. Find a spiritual master, that's okay. That's a principle. But how do you ultimately find it? Because Krishna is working with you. So you show the sincerity, say, Krishna, I know I need guidance. Let me sincerely engage in your service. I want to advance. And then Krishna says, okay, here. Someone will show up in your life and say, to give you guidance. So Krishna's doing that in reciprocation. Even you don't do it yourself. He's doing it in reciprocation. So in similar ways, if you're feeling somewhat helpless in your devotional service, but your intention to advance is sincere and strong, then Krishna gives you help. Sometimes through situations that, like we were saying before, situations where you'll learn something through mistakes you make. Sometimes someone will just tell you something. It's the perfect thing you need to hear. Even sometimes it's just somebody on the street Sometimes it's sending a devotee. Sometimes it's Krishna from within the heart, guiding you, giving you intelligence. So bhakti it's based on mercy. And we can only get mercy because we look for it. It's a principle of surrender to want mercy, to expect mercy, to depend on mercy. But if we ever come to this point where we think, well, what's the point? I'm so fallen. Then we give that up. We give up even looking for the mercy because we think, why? I've tried and it doesn't work. I'm just too fallen, I'm too sinful. And then that's where Krishna's reciprocation stops, because your effort has stopped. As long as you're willing to make the effort, no matter how low you've fallen, there's always the possibility of getting Krishna's mercy. That's the whole point. So now Sundarupa is saying, we feel guilty. So how do we deal with guilt? Well, guilt is another aspect of Krishna's mercy. Because if you feel guilty, Krishna is showing you that the result of an action that you've done, which is so-called to give you pleasure, is actually causing you distress. So there's a saying, the pain of self-discipline, the pain of not being disciplined the pain of self-discipline is a lot less than the regret of doing something that you didn't want to do. You didn't control yourself. So the regret, the pain is short-lived, but the regret lives on after. So then you look at that and say, okay, I've done something. Now I'm regretting what I've done. And you allow yourself to experience that regret as a means of purification. So that's where remorse comes in. Remorse is a spiritual practice. I've done something, I feel remorseful, and if the remorse goes very deep, then it becomes easier to overcome that. And it may not happen in one day. It may take time, but it goes a little deeper. Over time it will go deeper. The remorse will go deeper, the guilt will go deeper. And at a certain point it'll start to shift your consciousness, and you'll get the power to overcome that. Because it's like if I hit you in the same spot enough, it's going to start to hurt, even if it didn't hurt the first 10 times. After a while, I keep tapping, you'll get black and blue. So it's something like that. It's like we're making mistakes over and over, and it's so subtly we're suffering, but it's not really penetrating enough. But if we allow ourselves to keep looking at it and saying, why am I doing this? Why can't I just do this other thing? What's wrong with me? And every time you make a mistake, allow yourself to feel that and experience that and question it. Then at a certain point, something's going to shift inside of you, and it's just going to wake you up and say, yes, I'm not going to do this. So it may take time. So the whole point is, anytime we come to a point where we allow the remorse or guilt or the shame or the contamination to cause us to just say, okay, what's the use? I give up. I can't do this. At that point, that's when we'll fail. Because at that point, we've turned Krishna's mercy off. Then we've just said, okay, Krishna, why should I try? There's no need to try. I can't do it. I've tried. I give up. At that point, we cut ourselves off from the mercy. So no matter how fallen we are, no matter how many times we've made a mistake, if still in our heart of hearts, say, Krishna, I don't want to do this, but I'm weak. Please help me. I'm going to try. And you make another effort. At a certain point, Krishna will say, yes. He'll give you his mercy. Now, there's a nice story. It's a really good story, and it illustrates a principle that operates in the material world and the spiritual world. It operates everywhere. So this person goes to a guru and he says, I want the truth, where is it? So the guru points down the road, and the person goes down the road, and the guru hears this big splat, and the person comes back and he's injured. And he says, I looked for the truth, I didn't find it, I just ran into this disaster area, and I fell and hurt myself. So where is the truth? And the guru says, no, the truth is there. where I pointed. And again, the Guru hears a big splat, and this person's getting really upset. He comes back, and he's all bloody. He said, I asked you to tell me where the truth is. Where is it? And the Guru says, it's just a little bit past splat. You like that one, Sundarupa? So, we hit a wall, we hit a dead end, and then we think, okay, I can't do it. And so we give up. But success is just beyond that point. Now, many, many people say, hold on a second, I want to close the door because there's noise here. I have read in many, many places where people say that success is often comes at this point where you just want to give up, where you've tried everything and that's it. It's just, okay, now I'm finished. He said, usually that is a sign that you're going to hit success, right? When you're like right at your last thread, the end of the rope. I just can't do this. It's a devotee was asking me this question today, as I was saying with this japa, and I said sometimes, when we're struggling like that, we have to think that Krishna, he just wants to see if we're willing to keep going. And Krishna knows it's difficult, but he wants us to become more dependent on him. And he wants us to show a little more commitment. Dependency, effort, commitment, all these things. You see, just like in any relationship, there's ways to get people to reciprocate with you. Just like in a male-female relationship, there's ways of acting. There's ways men can act where their wives will be very happy and they'll be very pleasant, very kind, and very loving. And there's ways that the wife can act so the husband will be very kind and very loving. It's really a science. So it's the same way with Krishna. We have to know how Krishna works and deals with us. And so that constant effort and never to give up, this attracts Krishna. That's what he wants to see. And even sometimes Krishna makes it difficult for us because he knows that struggle is helpful and that we need it. And he knows that if he gives it too easily, we'll take it cheaply, or we may become lax. We may give up the effort. So if you understand it in terms of relationship, and see, it's not just about me failing and becoming depressed. It's also about Krishna and the relationship, and Krishna wants me to continue. So you have to bring Krishna into it because it's not just about you, it's about doing it for him. A lot of times we look at this and go, well, I'm failing and I'm miserable and I feel guilty and all this. That becomes too much about you and how you feel. But think, well, what about Krishna? How does he feel? How does Krishna fit in the equation? Do it for Krishna. Just like sometimes we have to do something that's difficult, but we can do it because we're doing it for our family or for a friend. So we do it. Even though it's hard, or even though normally we couldn't do it on our own. It's the same with Krishna. Well, why not for Krishna? Why not for Guru? Okay, on my own, I'm weak. On my own, I find it difficult. But there's a relationship there. And is this what Krishna wants me to do? I'm about to do something. Is this what Krishna wants? No, but I want to do it. But does Krishna want it? How does that work into a relationship? How does Krishna play into this? Is Krishna looking? What is he thinking when I'm going to do this? How Krishna is testing my devotion. So we have to see it that way. And then asking Krishna, please help me. It's also an issue of faith, because a lot of times we don't have faith in ourselves, and that's the whole reason I brought up the story of Jagai and Madai, because we think, well, no, I'm fallen. I don't have enough faith. So if there's not enough faith, why would I even pray to Krishna to help me? Right? But because there's faith, then we can pray. We can go into this position of dependence. Krishna is very powerful. That's the whole point. So if you have that faith that he can do it, you put yourself in his hands and allow him to do it, then wonderful things will happen. But you have to really let Krishna do it. Okay? What that means, you have to understand what that means. You have to, within your own life, within your own heart, understand, what does that mean, to let Krishna do it through me? Sundarupa, you are not as fallen as Jagai and Madai, I can guarantee you. Now, you think you're pretty fallen, right? But you're not as fallen as they are. Jagai and Madai are interesting because when they got Lord Chaitanya's mercy, they went into an intense state of remorse. Because once they became purified, then they had to deal with the fact that they were killing people, they were raping women, they were stealing, they were cheating. They had to live with that reality because that was their life. And now they've come to Krishna consciousness, they're purified, so they're completely aware of what they've done and how bad it is. So they had to live with that. And they live in a deep state of remorse. And so one of the things that they did was they built a ghat, at a place where they used to rob and steal and do so many things. They wanted to pay people back. They wanted to get back, so they built a ghat there. And then people heard that Jagai and Madai had become devotees. And it's like people were so tormented by them. They just wanted to get back at them. And so they thought, okay, now they've become devotees. So we can do whatever we want, and they're not going to retaliate. So Jagai and Madai would be there. They'd like to go there to the ghat, because they offered this bathing ghat. They built it and they offered it to everyone. So they would just be there, to kind of like serve them, escort them. People would spit on them. They were so upset with them. And Jagai and Madai accepted it. And they felt, yes, we deserve this, and they accepted it. Is that amazing? So, this transition from Jagai and Madai to this position where people are spitting on them and they're thinking, we deserve so much worse. Is that amazing? So that's such a nice story because it's taking someone from the lowest position and showing how high they come. I love that, Maharani. That is so nice. When I come to the end of myself, I come to the beginning of God. And so in that way, sometimes that's the only way we can come to Krishna. And he creates that situation. And even once we've come to Krishna, sometimes that's the only way we can keep coming. You see, the thing is, when we become more advanced in Krishna consciousness, the impetus to serve Krishna is not coming from the fact that we can't be happy in this world. And it's not coming from any kind of suffering. But until we come to that position, that's where we're getting most of our impetus, or a lot of it. Of course, we're getting it from taste also. So the taste is pulling us, but the suffering is pushing us. So we need both. But in the more neophyte, beginning stage, we're getting more of it from the pushing part than the pulling part. So Krishna knows that, and that's why he designed the world this way. And that's why he can administer some discomfort to us, physical, emotional, mental, whatever, when in areas where we need it, when we need it, because he knows it'll push us closer to him. And in a more advanced state of Krishna consciousness, we don't need that. Because there's a natural attraction, there's a natural desire within the core of the heart to serve and please Krishna. And no longer are we serving and pleasing Krishna to become free from suffering. Now, in an earlier state of Krishna consciousness, the suffering, it helps us. So we are, we're chanting, "Oh Krishna, please get me out of the material world. I'm suffering so much. I just want to go back to you." That's not pure devotional service. That's jnana mishra bhakti. That's devotional service mixed with jnana, because we're serving Krishna with a desire to become free from suffering. And jnana is a process by which we become free from suffering. But so Krishna is using that because that's where we're at. And I just want to go back to God. This world is so miserable. I just want to get out of here. I can't take it. I don't like it. Blah, blah, blah. That's all helpful. But that's a lower stage of Krishna consciousness. And so in the higher stage, you don't feel that way. You just feel, I want to serve Krishna to please him. That's all. In the material world, out of the material world, you don't really have a material world anymore. You see? So Krishna needs to do that in the earlier stages of bhakti, because that's what we relate to. If things don't work for us, then what do? You see, I just heard this amazing story. This is an interesting story. The demigods went to Lord Brahma, and there was a problem in the universe. I forget the actual situation. And so they wanted Lord Brahma to do something, and oftentimes Lord Brahma will go to Lord Vishnu if he can't solve the problem. And so he told the demigods, "Well, why don't you come with me, because there's power in numbers, and then we'll get the help of Lord Vishnu." So they went to Lord Vishnu, they explained the problem, that they needed help. And I think it was a time when people were deviating from the Vedas. So Krishna said, "Okay, I'll send Lord Buddha, and he'll solve that problem." And anyway, I forget the details. But the point is, Krishna said, "Okay, I'll do everything, but before I do everything, I just wanted you all to know that if you want to go back to Godhead, I'll offer it to you." He said to all the demigods, "I'll offer to you. I can give it to you now. You can go." And guess what they said? They all said, "No, we're fine. We're happy here. We're okay. Thank you, but we'll stay here." Isn't that an interesting story? I find that so amazing because it demonstrates this point so well. Doesn't it? That, okay, here, the demigods, they're comfortable. Their life there's no real suffering there. So the Krishna offers them the opportunity to go back to God, and they say no. And it's not because they want to stay in the material world to help people. It's because they're enjoying. So let's go back a little bit, and I'll answer your questions. I want that. I don't know where that dangers of Vaishnava aparad came. I'm not sure. But so Sundarup says, we get disturbed when we see people suffering. Is it the same as jnana mishra bhakti? If they're disturbing you personally, and because of that, you feel so disgusted with the world that you just want to get out of it, that would be jnana mishra bhakti. Jnana, jnana mishra bhakti. Jnana means knowledge. If you're disturbed seeing people suffering out of compassion, no, that's pure devotional service. That's different. Because it upsets you to see other people suffering because you don't want to see people suffer, and your heart melts and you want to do something to help them. That's different than what we're talking about. So TJ says, good question, TJ. But we hear so many times, go back home, back to Godhead. Does this mean more of a state of consciousness? It could mean it, or it's addressing, a lot of times when we tell people that you should want to go back to Godhead is because we're addressing people on the lower level of Krishna consciousness where they can relate to that this world is not perfect, there's a better world. It's like advertising. Because that's what's going to motivate most people, because that's the state of consciousness they're in, because they're looking to be happy. And we're saying, okay, you can look to be happy, but you're not going to perfectly find it in the material world, but you'll find it in the spiritual world. So you should want to get out of this world because this world is miserable. And then we'll quote verses from Bhagavad Gita and say, look, everything is temporary. Whatever pleasure you get, it's going to end. All your friends are going to die, or you're going to die first, like that. So we go on and we'll explain. You're going to get old, especially explain that to women. Women don't like, it's harder for women getting old than men because women are supposed to always look beautiful, and men don't have to look so beautiful. So it's really, really hard. Women don't like getting old. The first gray hair is really a problem for them, or the first wrinkle. They don't like it. So you say all these things. And it's right, it's speaking right to where they're at. But when you advance in devotional service, that no longer becomes a concern. It's only on a lower stage. So we may be on that lower stage where we think, yeah, I just want to go back to Godhead. I want to get out of this material world. So that's good. That becomes your impetus. But when you advance beyond anartha nivritti, where the unwanted desires are removed, then you're with Krishna. You're so close to Krishna that there is no material and spiritual to want to get out of. You're always with Krishna. You're in Krishna consciousness. You're always in bliss. You're not suffering. So there's no suffering to get out of. So to want to go back to Godhead to get out of suffering only means you're experiencing suffering. So it works for you. I think that's clear, right? And then Pallavi says, oh my God, why would they say that? And I'm not sure what they would say. What did I say they would say? I forgot. So anyway, the discussion we're having here is showing that Krishna's mercy is always extended, no matter how low we go. And as long as we're willing to take it, that we can be uplifted from any condition. And the purpose of understanding this is because we can become discouraged. If we look at our heart and we see what's there, we can become discouraged. But we should never be discouraged, because what's in our heart, it's only there as a reaction to past material activities. And so it's just what it is. It's like sometimes we say my mind, I wish my mind wouldn't do this, my mind's doing this. But then we have to understand it's what the mind does. It's just the mind functions a certain way. And if we're talking about the material mind, then the material mind will function a certain way. And then we'll look at how it's functioning, and then we'll say, oh, my mind is trying to trick me, or my mind is trying to cheat me, or my mind is desiring things, but I really don't want them. And then we'll say, oh, my mind. That's how the mind functions on the material level. So when we're progressing in Krishna consciousness, we're progressing from the material level. So the mind's going to do that because that's what it does. So all we have to do is acknowledge, okay, that's what the material mind does, and not be so disturbed or upset by it. It's just acknowledge that's what it does. But if I stick to Krishna consciousness, my mind will become spiritualized, and eventually it's going to do that less and less, and eventually it's just not going to do that anymore. So the point is that when we're in this conditioned stage, it's just a little bit, it's a temporary stage we have to go through before we become purified enough to get to the anartha nivritti and the nishta stage, where we're not really bothered by material desire anymore. But when we're in the lower stage, there will be struggle, there will be setbacks, but the process works. So the main thing is, what we're trying to understand here is the main thing is the process works, and somehow or other, we always have to be fixed in the process, no matter what's going on, no matter how many bumps in the road are going on. We have to be fixed in the process, because the process will outride anything that's getting in the way. Yeah. And so T.G. says you become discouraged when you're focusing on your own pleasure. Well, anytime we focus on ourself, it's brought our consciousness down. And I was explaining this on one of the Tuesday classes, that we're very self-absorbed. So we focus on Do I like this? Don't I like this? So then we become the center. And if you look at it from a philosophical point of view, it is because we're spiritual beings, there's this eternal problem, perpetual problem, and a lot of people can't describe what it is, but everybody feels it on some level if they're real enough with themselves. We're spiritual beings in a material body in a material world, so we're out of our nature. We're not in the ocean. We're not the fish in the ocean. So no matter what we try to do, it doesn't work perfectly. I mean, we can cover ourselves. We can intoxicate ourselves with things or with actual intoxicants. We can make the body comfortable. We can do so many things. But essentially, this world is not the way we would design a world if we could design one. We wouldn't design it like this. So we have this dissidence or this conflict that we're spiritual beings existing within a temporary material body. And for the spiritual being, that just doesn't work. So then when you go out focused on your own pleasure, you can't do it perfectly. Materially speaking, you can't do it perfectly. So it's bound. You're bound to get to this point of just disgust or fed up, or if you're a materialist, you don't even know. You can't figure it out. But it's just you're not happy. And so anytime we make our happiness the center of the universe, which is what we're doing when we're trying to be happy, it's like our happiness becomes the most important thing in the universe. It's like, okay, you read in the paper, kids are starving here, and there's economic depression here, and just this embassy got bombed here, and this happened here, and you read all that, and you're upset. You don't feel good about it, but you're on your way to the mall to buy something you really want, and that's where your universe is. That's where you exist. I mean, it's a reality. It's a sad reality, but it's true. Okay, the whole world's falling apart. If you're Mother Teresa and you read that, you just want to drop everything and go and save those people and help them and take every penny you have out of the bank and immediately get on a plane and fly to Africa and help those kids. Most people are not Mother Teresas. Most people read that and they go, oh, this is bad. I feel so bad. These poor kids. Maybe they give $100 to the charity. But let's go shopping. I want to get the new this. Or I just saw, some nice shoes. And they forget everything. So we are the center. And so there's this endeavor, constant endeavor, to make ourselves happy. And it doesn't work. So it's like it's never going to work. And people who are intelligent, smart, they realize it doesn't work. And then they take to spiritual life. And the people who don't realize it doesn't work, they just keep doing it. But subtly, on some level, they know it doesn't work. But depending what mode they're in, if they're heavily in the mode of ignorance, they can't get it. They don't get it. They don't allow themselves to feel the pain of that. So TJ says, so Sundarup says, my next question, a lot of times while chanting or while offering prayers, I suddenly get to hear my inner consciousness telling me the solution to my long-awaited question, problem, and the answer is also brilliant. How do I distinguish whether it is the Parmatma telling me or just a speculation of my mind? Well, if it's a good answer, it's Parmatma. And if it's a bad answer, it's your material mind. That's a pretty black and white definition. Of course, then you can ask the next question, how do I know it's a good answer? You know it's a good answer because it brings you to Krishna consciousness. And it's in line with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. You know it's a bad answer because it's going to take you away from Krishna consciousness. And it's not in line with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Now, if you see it as a brilliant answer, if you see it as a solution, if you see it as helping you, then accept it that Krishna's giving you guidance. And if you were really praying for it, then if you're really praying for spiritual guidance, your material mind is not going to give it to you. Now you could say it's the spiritual side of your mind. So, Paramatma is speaking to you through your mind, because your mind is a subtle physical element with which your consciousness works through. So, but if it's just the material mind's business is just to enjoy Maya. So how do you know it's the material mind? How do you know it's Parmatma? Well, if it's about material enjoyment, then yeah, it's the material mind. If it's actually spiritual, if it's actually helping you in Krishna consciousness, accept it as Parmatma. Now then you might say, but maybe I'm not philosophically right. And that's another issue. But I would say as a principle, the principle is if it's bringing you to Krishna, if it's guiding you to Krishna, accept it that Krishna is reciprocating with your desire. Yeah, I mean, it boils down to sincerity. And also, if you're sincere, you should know whether it's Krishna or not. I mean, I think sometimes if you think it's Krishna, you just have to go with it and act on it with enough detachment that you're willing to see whether it is Krishna's plan or not. Or you ask somebody else and say, this is what I believe Krishna is revealing to me. What do you think? Ask someone you respect. Test it. Someone may say, no, that's Maya. That won't help you. Or someone may say, yes, it sounds like Krishna's inspiring you. Very early in the movement, about 68, there was one devotee. She wrote Prabhupada. She was in high school, and she described to Prabhupada how she decorated her altar, and her altar was not decorated in the standard way, a lot of leaves and things. And Prabhupada said, you decorated your altar very nicely, and I can see that Krishna is giving you intelligence. So, according to the Pancharatras, or any of the books on deity worship, she didn't do it correctly. But Prabhupada saw something deeper. What was the desire to please Krishna? So he said, Krishna is inspiring you, giving you intelligence. Now, many, many times, Prabhupada would tell us, if you're sincere, Krishna will give you intelligence. Or he would point out, through the actions of someone, that Krishna has inspired you to do this. You know, they would write to Prabhupada and said, I've done this. And Prabhupada would say, Krishna inspired you to do this. So even very young devotees, Prabhupada was acknowledging that Krishna was giving intelligence and inspiration and guidance. So it doesn't mean you have to be very advanced. It just means you have to be sincere. And if you're sincere, then according to these things that Prabhupada was telling different devotees, Krishna will give you intelligence and will guide you. And if in the end result you live happily ever after, then you know that was Krishna. And if in the end result you fall on your face, then you might have to look back and say, I guess maybe that wasn't Krishna, or maybe I didn't understand. Maybe it was and I didn't understand. Okay, so now Bandiravan says, Hare Krishna. Even though I understand it's difficult to get focus from us and put Krishna in focus, the I or false ego is very strong. How can we overcome this? I think it goes back. I think the problem for a lot of us is we don't relate to Krishna as a person. We relate to him as like a principle, or we relate to Krishna as, well, he's God, so God is in a category which is unique, and so we don't relate to him personally. We just kind of relate to him as God. And the point I'm making is when we do that, we kind of really don't relate at all when we relate to God, because it becomes, I don't want to necessarily say impersonal, although it can become impersonal. It becomes abstract. It's just he's God and he's out there and I'm a fallen soul down here and I don't have any relation with him. I don't know who he is and so forth. No, we shouldn't relate that way. We should understand that we have a relationship with Krishna. Krishna is attracted to us by what's in our heart, but what we give to that relationship through our heart, and we should be looking at what's in our heart and how it's affecting that relationship. Because when we're controlled by false ego, all we're thinking about is enjoying. And so if we're just thinking about enjoying, then the consciousness of enjoying requires that we move Krishna out of the picture. Because if Krishna's in the picture, he gets in the way of our material enjoyment because he's the enjoyer. Just like maybe, You sneak into your friend's house when they're on vacation because they have these really cool video games or whatever it is you want to play. Or they have, really a $5,000 guitar. So you sneak in because you know how to get in the back door because you've been in with him and he shows you where the key is. And then you're in there playing his guitar, his video games, or whatever it is he has. Do you want him to come home at that point? No, because if he comes home, you have to leave and you can't enjoy it. So material consciousness is like that. False ego is like that. We have to move Krishna out of the picture to enjoy it. But if we bring Krishna into the picture in terms of a relationship we have with him, then, and we understand that that's the relationship, that relationship is the relationship, it's the most important relationship. That's what life is all about. That's the purpose of human life. The whole purpose of my material existence is that relationship, is developing it and strengthening it. And therefore, everything I do must be calculated in terms of, is that helping me get closer to Krishna or further away? Prabhupada said, anything you do which doesn't bring you closer to Krishna is sinful. So that's heavy. But looking at it in light of this conversation, then we can say, okay, anything that I do that is not bringing me closer to Krishna, it's false ego, it's pushing Krishna out of the picture, it's sinful, it's just reverting back to what we initially did, was we came to this material world to push Krishna out of the picture. And to enjoy, because we can't enjoy if he's in the picture. Unless we can convince him to help us enjoy, which is called piety. Religion, so-called religion. You get God to help you enjoy. So, if we connect ourselves always in terms of relationship, how is what I'm doing pleasing to Krishna or not pleasing to Krishna? We bring him, it's just like, if you're married, you have to constantly think how your actions affect the people in your family. So if you want to go somewhere or do something that you think they may not approve of, you have to ask, do you think it would be okay if I go out and do this today? And they might say, well, we were planning to do something else. I really don't think it would be a good idea because we haven't been together much. Like that. Or you have friends or whatever, you're in a club or whatever. There's some sensitivity to the relationship. So it's exactly the same with Krishna, that we have to look, okay, if I do this, but how does that affect my relationship with Krishna? We don't usually think that way. We just think, oh, I'm weak, I can't do this, we have excuses. But we have to ask ourselves, but okay, you have all these excuses, but how does this affect your relationship with Krishna? And then if we bring Krishna into that, then everything will change because we'll think of it differently. You see, TJ, the problem is we've become so good at getting Krishna out of the picture that we can do it without even thinking. And we do it without even knowing that we're doing it because we've done it for so long and we're so good at it. So it's so natural to us. And, we're enjoying Maya and Krishna's completely out of the picture, so-called enjoying Maya. And we're not even thinking, how would Krishna feel? Just like if you're married, right? And maybe you're at work and you're working with another woman and you work very closely with her for a period of time. If she's attractive, you probably become attracted to her. But if you're a good husband, you immediately think, what would this do to my relationship with my wife? I mean, this woman, I really like her. I feel good when I'm around her. She's really attractive. I like being with her. And you put two and two together and you realize, unless I'm careful, something's going to happen. And so if you're a good husband, you think, I have a wife, I have a family. I would never go off with another woman. That would destroy my family. So it's the same. What if I do this? And I think, I have Krishna. How is he going to feel about this? You see? You understand the idea? Okay. I think that's clear, right? So Sushma says, I lost everything a few years back and I wondered why. Now I am poised to cut off my most precious ties. And believe me, I'm so happy that Krishna is taking interest in my life, and I want him to arrange everything for me, and he's doing. Am I wrong? No. Because, but you have to go back, Sushma, you have to go back to another level. And that is that Krishna took things away. Krishna made arrangements. And see, the way you see it is Krishna made arrangements, and then because of that, you became Krishna conscious. But I don't see it that way. I see that you wanted to be Krishna conscious, and Krishna did those things to facilitate it. Because I think that's the way it happens for all of us. Now, it doesn't always look that way. It looks like, no, Krishna created these situations, then I became Krishna conscious. But that's not true. You wanted it. If you didn't really want to advance in spiritual life, he wouldn't have had to do that. Now we have Nimzu. She's in a similar situation where she really wants to be Krishna conscious. She's thinking about moving in the temple. So Krishna's arranging things in her life. It's just bringing to her to the point where she can detach herself. It's because of her sincerity. So Krishna's reciprocating and saying, okay, you want to be a devotee, okay, I will light both ends of this twig of your life here, so it's going to burn from both sides, so you really have nothing left now. Krishna will do that. If you don't need that, he won't do that. There's no, Krishna's not like, oh, whose life, he's sitting up there, okay, whose life can we make miserable next? This is really fun. I really like making people miserable. He doesn't think like that. Krishna sees the sincerity of our heart, and then he moves things around to help us. Now, if we don't need that, if we don't need this suffering or this and that, if we've advanced so much in Krishna consciousness in past lives, then Krishna may do things which are very subtle and more mild, and he may do things more positive for us, like provide sadhu sangha. Because he knows we'll just take that sadhu sangha and we'll run with it. We don't need to suffer. We've understood the nature of the material world in previous lives. So that's how Krishna works. I hope Sushma heard that. She said my voice wasn't clear. But anyway, it's being recorded, so you get to hear it, Sushma. Okay. So, and Zimzu is late, but she has a good excuse. Okay. As long as you have a good excuse, you're forgiven this time. I've been telling everybody the saying, if you're on time, consider yourself late. So I'm doing this workshop with the Russians here in Mayapur, and I've given them some classes, and I tell them, I've been saying, this is the mantra, because we're always late, and everyone's late. So they do programs on Sunday, and they start at 11, and I said, what time should I show up? And they said, show up at 11:30. I said, oh, one of those programs. And I said, no. I said, tell them if they're on time, they're late. So we did a workshop today, and everybody was on time. Everybody was early. If you're on time, consider yourself late. So it's a nice mantra. And Nimzu is forgiven. She has a good excuse. Okay. All right. Yeah. So now, here, what we're talking about is Krishna is he wants everybody. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying it. Okay, so no matter how low you go, Krishna's mercy will go as low as you go. And his mercy is more powerful than Maya. And then you can take it anytime you want. And then you can apply the process, and then you can become Krishna conscious. It's just going to take time. So that's what's happening. So now, if Krishna is that merciful, then shouldn't we want to reciprocate with that mercy? I mean, Krishna's offering himself. Look, no matter what you've done, no matter how fallen you are, I'm here. And he offers himself in his name. I'll come to you personally. So, if we're thinking in terms of relationship, then we see what is Krishna offering. It's just like, because a relationship, it can't exist to the highest degree, to the sweetest degree, if only one person is offering. So, if we see that Krishna is offering his mercy, he's offering his devotees, he offered us Srila Prabhupada, he offered us ISKCON, he's offering us prasadam, he's offering us so many things, then naturally we want to reciprocate. But if we're in this consciousness where everything's about me and my enjoyment, like then it's just like no matter what mercy Krishna offers, no matter how kind and willing he is, we're still absorbed in, well, I want to go shopping and get that. We're still in the center of the universe. And so we can't develop this close relationship. And therefore, when you actually think about a close relationship with Krishna, it can be very frightening because you realize how unprepared you are for that level of commitment and surrender. Because Krishna, he's so willing to give himself, which means you have to give yourself also. And he's so willing to exchange loving feelings and emotions, which means you have to do that also. So some of us, we go to a point where we just stop and we realize that. We may not even realize this, but subconsciously we're saying, wow, this is really heavy. It's like Krishna's really serious about this relationship. So, just meditate on it. Just think about it. How much Krishna is offering and how much are we willing to accept that offering and how close are we willing to get to Krishna? It's a very interesting meditation. If you're honest with yourself, you can see that it's like when a lot of men, they have cold feet about getting married because they realize what the commitment's going to be, and it's a lot more fun to have a girlfriend than it is to be married, often. At least many men think that way. So they look at the responsibility, and the woman says, well, do you want to get married? Do you want to commit? And some men say, I'm not ready to commit. It's too much. So I think it's similar that way in our relationship with Krishna, that sometimes we look at it and we realize that this requires deep commitment, and I don't know if I'm ready to make it. And Krishna really wants me to be in this relationship deeply, thickly. So meditate on it and see. Meditate and see? Okay. So, Sushma, you're asking a question. I'm not sure exactly what should we avoid to get Krishna's constant mercy? I mean, what we should avoid, what shouldn't we do? I think what I'm saying here is how not to think, or how it's not so much what we should avoid. It's a consciousness more than an action. It's a willingness to be open to Krishna's mercy. You have to want it. You have to know that you need it. And that's how Krishna's mercy comes. Because Krishna extends himself to those who feel fallen to the point that they really depend on Krishna's mercy. So if there's any kind of pride there, then we won't be open to Krishna's mercy. If there's any kind of reluctance to be closely connected with Krishna, say, well, I want to still stay in the center. So Krishna, just give me a little mercy. I don't want too much, because if I get too much, then I might be too Krishna conscious. So there's that consciousness also, that there's like this prayer of this monk. So he's praying, said, Krishna, God, please give me celibacy. And then he says, but I'm not really ready, so don't give it to me yet. So there's kind of that idea, okay, Krishna, I want you, but you're not too much, not too fast, not too quick. So there's a fear there. And so we want to get over that fear. There's this There's something inside many of us that's saying that if I get too close to Krishna, I won't be happy. I'll be giving up too much. So we want to get over that and be totally. So if we're totally open to the relationship and open to Krishna bestowing His mercy and coming closer to Krishna, then there's nothing going to get in the way from getting Krishna's mercy because you're open to it. You want it. You're not afraid of it. But if you're afraid of it, thinking, well, maybe if I get Krishna's mercy, then there'll be things required of me that I'm not ready for. Maybe I'll become too Krishna conscious. Maybe I'm not ready to be that Krishna conscious. Then you'll block it in your own consciousness. And Krishna will see that and He'll say, okay, you don't want it. You're not ready, so I won't give it. So the dependency and the desire to have it and the dependency on Krishna and the willingness to have it and the willingness to reciprocate when Krishna gives it, that's what you require. Okay, so Sundarupa says, while preaching, when new members join our Bhakti Vriksha classes, they come and join thinking their material life will improve. Is it okay to tell them that they will get material progress and slowly get them to reality? If yes, what is a good approach to get them to Krishna consciousness? It's an interesting question because Bhaktisiddhanta said the opposite. He said, for the devotee, their path is paved with, what did he say? Paved with stones, paved with sharp stones, paved with obstacles, troubles. So I think both things are true, that if you follow Krishna conscious principles, then your life will be easier and better. But that doesn't mean your spiritual path will be so easy. Because now you're getting serious. So it depends a lot how you explain this. Because if you explain it from the perspective that if you please Krishna, you will be pleased, Krishna will take care of you, have faith, all that's true. But the problem is we want to avoid putting out the bait to people that if you become Krishna conscious, it will help you materially. We want to avoid doing that in a way that that's why people are attracted to Krishna. Because then that waters down our philosophy. And then we attract the wrong people. So you have to be careful. Now, you might explain it as a philosophical principle that Krishna takes care of His devotees and Krishna will provide. But to become Krishna conscious for that reason, that's not good. Because then you'll attract the wrong people with the wrong motive. So if it's explained in a philosophical context, then it's okay. I know some preachers do that. You give money, Krishna will bless you. It's true. If you give money to Krishna, He will bless you. But we have to be careful. Because otherwise, then we'll just start attracting people like the Christians. We'll just attract them for something material. God will give this to you. Worship Him. We don't want to worship Him to get it. He might give it, He may not give it. We could say, yes, it's a byproduct of bhakti, He'll give it, but it's not why we're worshiping Him. Does that make sense? So then Anna says, is indifference that point when you give up? It can be, because indifference is like, what does it matter anymore? Indifference can come from feeling spiritually weak, or it can come from being materially complacent. Everything's okay, so why try hard? But then again, it goes back to that point of relationship. Why try hard? Because there's a relation, there's a person, there's Krishna is there, there's a relationship that He's waiting for. He's giving you mercies. He wants you to come to Him. So indifference, you might say, well, indifference is just about you. It's just that I feel indifferent. No, it's indifference within a relationship. So, like Anna, if you have a relationship with another man, when you feel indifferent, now it's going to affect him. If you just feel indifferent about life, it doesn't necessarily affect personal relationships so much. But if you feel indifferent about somebody, then it definitely affects that relationship. So if you feel indifferent about spiritual life, what that means is you're feeling indifferent about Krishna. And so that definitely affects the relationship. Does that make sense? So indifference is a symptom of the mode of ignorance. Because in passion, there's action. In ignorance, there's not action. So indifference is a non-active state. I just don't care, so I don't do anything. And so that's the furthest, mode of ignorance is the furthest state from Krishna consciousness. Passion is closer and goodness is closer. So we want our devotees to be acting, if not in the transcendental position, in the mode of goodness, because that's the closest position to transcendence. It's just like if you want something, the closer you are to it, the easier it is to get it. But indifference is very much a symptom of ignorance, and so that means further away from Krishna. So Senya is saying, well, what's the difference between pride and reasonable dignity? I think the problem, dignity is self-respect. Self-respect empowers you to function in a healthy way. Pride, what pride does is it, let's say you do something well. So you take pride in your work, that I do my work well. But it's not that you want everyone to glorify you. It's just that you're dedicated to what you do out of you say self-respect, that if I do something, I should do it well. If I do it for Krishna, I should do it well. So my self-respect and my respect for my service, they kind of become one and the same thing. But pride is I do it because I'm doing it motivated by a desire to get people to acknowledge me. So that just pollutes the whole thing. Because in that state, how can you offer your devotion to Krishna? But in the former state, self-dignity, you can. I say, Krishna, I'm doing this to please you. And you're very confident about it, and you feel very proud that you are able to do this service for Krishna. But it's not a pride which is meant to attract people's attention, so you'll be honored. Because honor is a subtle form. It's just the basis of material contamination. So we want to avoid being motivated by the desire to be recognized. That's the point. That's a huge contamination. And that can go so far as to manipulate yourself within Krishna consciousness to get it. And then you could start calculating, well, if I do this service, or if I put myself in this situation, I will be honored. So that's basically very, very far from Krishna consciousness, borderline demoniac. Of course, you're doing it for Krishna, but it's just low level of Krishna consciousness. So, did everybody lose their sound? Sound is back. Okay, so now I don't know what you didn't hear. Okay. I was answering Senya's question about pride. So maybe I'll just answer it again and say, if I'm motivated to want to be honored, that's pride. If I have respect for myself, that I do something well out of self-respect, and I'm motivated to do that to please Krishna, that's not pride. Reasonable dignity, yeah, there's no problem. Even there's transcendental pride. I'm proud to be a devotee, I'm proud of my spiritual master, I'm proud to be engaged in Krishna consciousness. It's a sense of joy. It's not a sense of wanting to be honored. It's a sense of personal pride. See, personal pride and wanting to be honored are two different things. So that's why we can be proud of things in Krishna consciousness. Even, let's say you did something well that you didn't think you could do well, and you say, I'm proud of myself, I did that. That is not the pride we're talking about. Because you didn't do it to be honored. You say, I'm proud of myself, I was able to distribute so many books, I didn't think I could do it. And you feel so your self-confidence becomes stronger. You realize that Krishna empowered you, so you feel good about that. So that's fine. Okay. Okay. Okay, no sound, no sound. Can you come back and answer the beginning again? You're back. The beginning of Senia's question. So Sundarup, the beginning of Senia's question or whose question? So I don't know what question. You have to tell me. If there's any other question I didn't answer. Before Senia was Anna's question. She was asking about indifference. And I was just saying indifference is a symptom of ignorance. And indifference is relational, because if we're indifferent to Krishna, it's a relationship issue. If we're just indifferent about life, it's a personal issue. It says we're just going to fail. But in Krishna consciousness, it's indifference towards Krishna. Yeah, so we've heard that. Okay. Bandiravan asks, what does it mean that one who is full in Krishna consciousness and is eligible to enter Goloka? Does it mean he loves Krishna the most and even more than his spiritual master? Basically, is it that all jivas in Goloka love Krishna the most, other than souls in the spiritual world? Okay, I'll answer that question. But let's go to Senia's question about arrogance. Can arrogance be reasonable? Okay, that's an interesting question. Okay, and then now Palak's saying we didn't hear the full answer about the Bhakti Vriksha. Okay, so let me go back then. When I was saying with the Bhakti Vriksha, I was just saying that you don't want to bring people into Krishna consciousness with the bait of become Krishna conscious and your material life will get better. You want to preach Krishna consciousness in general, and a part of the preaching may be that if you satisfy Krishna, you'll be satisfied, your life will be better, and so on. So it's just a different way of presenting it. So it's presenting it within the context of a whole philosophical system, instead of isolating, I'll just do this and your material life will be better. Now, sometimes we may do these things to entice people, but we just have to be careful, because we don't want it to become a philosophy as it is in Christianity, and then you attract people on that basis, because then you'll just attract the wrong people. And then those people, when they realize what pure devotional service is, they won't want to do it. So what about arrogance? Can it be reasonable? Well, ultimately, anything can be used for Krishna. So there can be a spiritual kind of arrogance. But just like there's envy, and there's envy in Krishna consciousness. But from the material side of arrogance means you think you're better. And that is pretty much the opposite of the humility, where I think I'm not better, but you're better. So offer all respects to others, have no respect for myself. Now, it may have a spiritual dimension outside of this world, or a spiritual use, or you see, how do you know something spiritual? Because you can use it in Krishna service and it can produce a spiritual result. So just like Hanuman used his anger, and it used it to be able to serve Krishna. So if you can find out a way that arrogance can be used to serve Krishna, just like maybe you're debating some arrogant scientist, and you become more arrogant and you defeat him, and then he becomes humbled by it. Okay, maybe that'll work. But that wouldn't mean that you're arrogant. That means you're just using arrogance as a tool to serve Krishna, and therefore you found it useful and it accomplished a purpose. But you're not arrogant. So you see anything that you can use in Krishna's service, then that quality becomes transformed. But strictly speaking, if we're looking at it simply materially, then arrogance just means I'm better, which is not Krishna consciousness at all. It's anything but Krishna consciousness. Okay. Okay, so now, do we have another question I missed? Let me go back up. Okay, I think I answered everything. Oh yeah, no. What does it mean one who's full Krishna consciousness is eligible to go to Goloka? Well, There's different kinds of devotees, and some devotees, their goal is to go to Goloka, and some is to go to Vaikuntha. Can a devotee love Krishna more than his spiritual master? It's possible, but you won't think of it that way. Yeah, and you'll never think, I love Krishna more than my spiritual master, even if objectifying it may be true, but you don't really look at it that way. I mean, from our position, we might say, okay, the gopis love Krishna more than Mother Yasoda, than the cowherd boys, like that. But within their realm, it's not how they look at it. So, yeah. All jivas in Goloka love Krishna more than other souls. Their love's more intense because they're not loving Krishna as God, they're just loving Krishna as a person. And so the relationships are more intimate and intense, where in Vaikuntha, they're regulated by rules and regulations. So, just like the example, we might have the example of a judge. The people may have affection for a judge, but they call him your honor. And so their affection, or like a king, their affection is guided by rules and regulations, but the affection the family has is different. It's not guided by rules and regulations, it's guided by love. So Goloka, the love is more intense and spontaneous, and it's guided by feelings of affection, not by rules and regulations. So even in Vaikuntha, it's guided by rules and etiquette. And, the cowherd boys, like they're playing with Krishna, they steal his lunch. So what kind of etiquette is that? Or they say, Krishna, close your eyes, and they put a flower in his mouth. So it's a more intense kind of relationship. It's more intimate. And so therefore it's considered higher because of that. Okay. All right, so why don't we end? We went our hour and a half plus. That's a lot of food for thought. And we will get these classes up. We started putting these classes up on my channel on YouTube because they weren't always going up in a timely manner onto Krishna.com. But now the person who's doing this is just moved into the temple for 3 months, so I'm not sure if she'll have time to do it. But we will see. And thank you all for coming, and I hope you learned something. And please share with others. And we will see you on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 6:30 India time, and the wee hours of the morning European time. Oh, another question. Hare Krishna. Why would some devotees want to go to Goloka or others to Vaikuntha? Where should we endeavor to go? Why would some people like to go to Vaikuntha if Goloka is higher? One of the reasons is they don't know about Goloka, and another reason is they've been trained to worship, or they've been trained in a certain sampradaya where that's the goal of the sampradaya. But Lord Chaitanya came to give love of Krishna in the mood of the gopis. So we're taking His mercy and He's directing us to Vrindavan to follow the footsteps of the inhabitants of Vrindavan and to develop the kind of love that they have. So in our sampradaya, Gaudiya, Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, we focus on the worship of Radha and Krishna, not Lakshmi Narayan. And so that is our aspiration, given to us by Mahaprabhu. That's what He came to give. And it doesn't mean that we're higher. It means right now our aspiration is higher by the mercy of Mahaprabhu. So this is how we're being trained. It is Mahaprabhu's mercy. This is what He came to give. So this is our aspiration. We want to love Krishna in either the mood of a gopi, a parent, a friend, servant, but in Vaikuntha it's all service, servitude, in reverence. So Mahaprabhu came to give us something better, so we take advantage of that, because that's what He gave. Sundarupa is saying, this is my first class and I liked it a lot. Thank you so much. I have to leave. Hare Krishna. And Palak Paneer, Das Nudasi with Leela, his eternal consort. I hope, maybe, I don't know, maybe not eternal, but they're still together, so they're doing good. And he says, or she says, I have a small question regarding guilt. You said guilt can be a bhakti leverage, but sometimes guilt habit can take us also to be guilty of being a devotee or trying to devote the Hare Krishna way and not the Abrahamic way and so on. Is that kind of guilt totally mundane? Yes. Well, it's because if you're seeing a difference between Judaism and Krishna consciousness or Christianity and Krishna consciousness, and you feel that you have some obligation, then you're seeing things externally. That if you see it in terms of your ability to love God and that you're facilitating, Krishna consciousness facilitates that, then I would say if the guilt is still there, it's a lack of faith. It's not as much a guilt issue as an issue of faith, that you don't have faith. That in other words, what is the essence of Judaism and what is the essence of Krishna consciousness? What is the essence of any spiritual tradition? It's to love. And if you can love God through this method and achieve it, then why would you see a duality between any tradition? Unless people are making you feel guilty that you're not doing certain things that you should be doing. Yeah, but then that guilt is coming from them and you're allowing them to affect you. But the guilt is not inherently coming from Jewish biblical theology, I don't think. Does that make sense? It's coming through your upbringing of what you've been taught, and now there's guilt there that maybe you're... Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing in Hinduism when someone worships the demigods and they stop worshiping the demigods. They have guilt because that's their tradition. But that's why Krishna says sarva dharma, give up all dharmas and just surrender to me. And then he says, don't worry. So surrender is, what are all like in Judaism, it's like Smarta Brahmanism. There's so many rules and regulations and rituals. So it's a lot of it centered around ritual. And Krishna says, sarva dharma, give it all up and just become my devotee. So to not give it up and then be attached to those rituals would be in disobedience of Krishna's order to give it all up. Right? Wouldn't it? And in disobedience of what Krishna wants. So it's a question of faith. You believe Krishna's God and that's what he wants. And that you'll fulfill all your mitzvahs and all your obligations by surrendering. That's the definition of faith. That if I give to Krishna, all obligations are fulfilled. So, something to think about, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, so this is good. Maharani, you could come. So I'm going to try to do these classes every Saturday at this time, but I travel sometimes and I do programs sometimes on Saturdays. So we're going to play it week by week and see if we can do it. Any higher aspiration than Braja? Yeah. Become a pure devotee in Braja. And keep becoming pure and love Krishna more and more, and that love can increase eternally. Yeah, okay. So Pallavi says that we can send a recorded link to the class. That would be good. Okay. I don't know if that answered your question, Pollock, but I think you can think about it, and if it didn't, then we can converse more about it. All right, thank you everyone for attending, and we will see you on Tuesday if you can come. Otherwise, we'll see you next Saturday at the same time. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.